A good-natured, fun-loving man.
He was just a wonderful person. He was so funny and so charming.
Enjoying his retirement years.
At that point in his life, he was very content, very close to his family, his nieces and nephews.
Is brutally gunned down a month before his wedding.
It was point-blank assassination.
There's a big puddle of blood. Oh my God!
Investigators pieced together a series of clues.
We had to look at what role that upcoming wedding had and what happened.
They have their arguments, they had their differences.
Was the scene staged to cover up an intentional killing? The investigation kept hitting dead end after dead end.
And chased down multiple suspects.
It was a whodunit. We were hoping for that break to come.
Revealing a plot fueled by greed.
He was somebody who had had a criminal history of theft and assault.
Just when police are close to making an arrest,
it was like he had just got smacked in the head with a baseball bat.
They uncovered damning evidence pointing to a surprising suspect.
You never expect anything like this.
And then all of a sudden, the kill was right in front of us.
In 2014, the sleepy Pittsburgh suburb of Kennedy Township is rocked by a panicked call to 911.
What's going on?
I just come home from work, and my husband, he's been on the ground. He's dead. There's a big puddle of blood.
Police, fire, and ambulance are coming, okay?
The woman who made the 911 call, Carol Apaya, says the victim is her soon-to-be husband, 59-year-old Jack Parks.
When I arrived on scene, the first thing I noticed is that the victim's head was covered in blood. It was on closer examination that you could see it was a gunshot wound. One challenge we had right out of the gate was that there was no casing or gun found. We don't move his body until it can be photographed. It was possible there was a gun underneath him that no one had seen, so we weren't 100% sure if the gunshot wound at that point had been self-inflicted or homicide. We looked for a while. Unfortunately, we didn't find any type of gun.
Detectives searched for any signs of what happened to Jack and who pulled the trigger.
It was pretty clear right off the bat that this was some type of a home invasion or robbery that occurred.
It didn't look like a struggle had ensued in the room, but once you walked through the victim's house, the further you got into it, the more you realized the level of disarray it was in. And as you went into the dining room, you started to see jewelry box here, a drawer gone through here, papers rifled through. Upstairs, there was just complete disarray. The drawers were all pulled out. The clothing that was inside the drawers was strewn everywhere. Jewelry boxes flipped open, empty watch boxes laying there.
We were trying to determine, was the scene staged? Was someone just trying to make it look like a robbery or a burglary, and when in fact they're just trying to cover up an intentional killing where they intended just to walk in and execute somebody? The house was dusted and processed for DNA and fingerprints. We then began to process the outside of the residence, looking for any type of forced entry, and none of that was found.
Our first thoughts were the victim either knew the actor or was familiar with him. That's just our first impression. So, who was friends with the victim, who would have access to the victim, who would have opportunity to the victim, and who would he trust?
It really was a shocking case. He was killed execution style. This homicide happened in an area that we don't normally have murders.
Jack's death is the first homicide in Kennedy Township in 10 years. The news stuns his family and friends.
When I got that phone call, and I heard Carol's voice, I knew something was wrong, and she said, "Jack's gone." I said, "What do you mean, gone?" She said, "He's dead." And then she said he was murdered. And I just went into shock.
Jack Parks was born the second of 5 kids in Pittsburgh in 1955. Friends and family were everything to him.
Jack always made friends. He was one of the best people I've ever known. He would do anything for anybody. We first met in first grade. We hit it off all through high school. And after that, it was a good ride.
Jack was so, well, like, he could be charming when he wanted to and funny. He was just a wonderful person.
In 1989, a chance encounter changed Jack's life.
Jack met Carol at the local bar, and I guess they hit it off.
They were two peas in a pot. Since he brought Carol, we fell in love with Carol.
Jack was very close to his family. He had about 9 nieces and nephews.
Jack and Carol used to have their nieces and nephews over for sleepovers, making the popcorn and just having a good time. You'd have swore that Jack and Carol were the parents. They didn't have kids, so when those kids were around, they were their kids.
Jack had recently retired, had big plans for the future.
At that point in his life, Jack was very content. Him and Carol were to get married.
They've been together for over 25 years. Carol in the beginning really wanted to get married and Jack didn't. And then at one point, Jack wanted to get married and Carol didn't. And I used to tell Jack, you know what, I like to be living when you get married, when you say I do. And then when they set the date, I was so happy. It was going to be an exciting, very exciting day.
Tragically, Jack was murdered a month before the ceremony was to take place.
Her and Jack were going to be married on August 31st of that year, and it was really sad. It was so close.
At 5 p.m. on July 21st, 2 hours after Carol found Jack dead, police questioned her at the station.
Talking to Carol was so important because, first of all, we had to determine whether she was or wasn't involved, and we wanted to just get the best timeline from her. During the interview with Carol, she explained that she had left for work as usual, her normal time. About 5:40, she starts work at 6. Everything was fine when she left for work. It wasn't until a realtor called her about a potential buyer for Jack's late mother's home. And when the realtor couldn't get a hold of Jack, Carol started to worry. She tried to call Jack and there was no answer.
So then she got concerned. He always called her back every time that she tried to get a hold of him. So I think it was approximately about 2 o'clock she left work and then come over and find Jack, of course.
Detectives know that spouses are always the first suspect and must determine if they can trust Carol's version of events.
We have a timeline between 6 a.m. to 3 p.m. when she returns home. In some cases, if a person's a cold-blooded killer, they have killed him before she left the house, and then all of a sudden she finds him, and the killer's right in front of us.
Her demeanor, she was very upset, but you can't take a chance by skipping a stone and not trying to look at her.
Detectives are suspicious of why it took the couple so long to decide to get married, and if someone had cold feet.
Something that we thought is, are either one of them having affairs with someone else? Could that be a possible motivation? And is this upcoming wedding triggering that?
Coming up, detectives uncover a family feud.
They just decided to distance themselves from not let him come to the house.
And learn Jack's inner circle isn't as loving and devoted as it first seems.
Things got more contentious.
As police keep digging, more suspects surface.
We learned of several burglaries.
They had concerns about the employees. They hire criminals.
Just when the investigation is about to hit another dead end,
We had no idea who would have done this.
detectives make a crucial discovery.
It was exactly what we needed.
When we got the phone records back, it was, oh my God.
That was
Kennedy Township Police are investigating the area's first homicide in a decade. 59-year-old Jack Parks was found dead in his home by his fiancée Carol. What appears to be a robbery. But since there was no forced entry, investigators try to determine if this was actually a staged attack, and if the motive was something more personal.
when we interviewed Carol, we had to look at what role, if any, that upcoming wedding had in what happened. We had to start looking at every aspect of their lifestyle. What were the family dynamics? We had to chip away at a number of things in their life. Things that happened that day, but also things things that might have happened in the past that could be a motivation for this murder.
They had their differences. They have their arguments. But it wasn't my point to get involved in their squabbles.
We kept talking more and more about any kind of problems that they had had in their home. And I asked her, do either of them have a gun? And she said that they did not.
Carol says she would never do anything to hurt the love of her life. She wanted to marry him. Jack was her soulmate.
Jack and Carol, they loved each other. They felt they were already married. To everybody, they were husband and wife years before, the wedding was planned.
Carol was very upset. It was very difficult to talk to her while she processed that emotion, but then to still get the information we needed to keep moving the investigation forward. To me, that was a sign that she wasn't involved.
With suspicion shifting from Carol for now, investigators explore whether theft was the main motive.
The bedroom was ransacked. The mattress was disturbed. Things were emptied out of drawers.
Carol had indicated to me some items that should be there. Their wedding rings that they had bought. Jack collected some coins. He had some expensive watches. She indicated that the watches should be in the boxes. When we first processed the areas of disarray, none of those items were there. That was our first big clue to go off of. I knew that if we could find that jewelry, we could find who was involved. We didn't know if the person who took it might have given it to someone else, but we had to start with where is it, who has it, and how did they get it.
The next morning, the autopsy report comes in.
He was taken out with one shot to the right side of his head. It took it to a level where that is someone who probably came there with the intent to either use that weapon to intimidate or control Jack. There was a projectile that was recovered from his skull, and we were able to determine that we were looking for this .380.
So that was a good start for us. Now we knew what kind of gun we were looking for.
During the victim's autopsy, you could see that there were no wounds on his hands at all. There were no scratches. There were no broken fingernails. Nothing that seemed to indicate that he had had a chance to fight back. He had been caught completely off guard.
During Carol's interview, she indicated to police that Jack's nephew, Bradley Johnson, is someone they should look into.
Bradley was living across the street with his mother and father, across the street from Jack. And he was always over there. And from what I understand, he was one of the last ones to see Jack alive.
We made contact with Bradley, and Bradley had told us that he had gone over to Jack's house on the 21st, and he said he got there around 10:30 in the morning.
Detectives find that timing suspicious. They know Jack was killed sometime between 6 a.m. and 3 p.m. that day.
I asked him, I said, Bradley, what did you go over there to talk to him about? He said, well, Jack's mother had passed away, and he knew that Jack was looking to sell the home. But Bradley wanted to negotiate a deal with Jack, and he wanted to talk to Jack alone because he said, I don't want Carol weighing in on this. I wanted this to be a Parks family matter, and I want to discuss it with him. In his words, I didn't want her putting her 2 cents in. And that was a phrase that seemed to hint at some kind of animosity.
Bradley tells investigators that he finds Carol too controlling and that she shouldn't have a say in this family decision.
Jack wanted to wait until he could talk with Carol about it, which sort of defeated the purpose of why Bradley had gone there when she wasn't home. So he said he ended up leaving and they were going to revisit the conversation later.
As investigators press him further, Bradley reveals an alarming fact.
We did ask him about any firearms that he owned, and when Bradley told us he owned a .380 caliber pistol, it kind of was like, okay, this may be something broke bad, because now we know Carol leaves for work at 6 a.m. and Jack's alive at 10:30 because Brad's telling us he's over there.
He indicated he had left about 11:15. With Bradley's timeline, it definitely seemed that Bradley was very close in time to when Jack would have been killed. And he put himself there. He had the same type of gun.
Had the discussion about Jack's mother's house turned fatal?
With the timing of Bradley's conversation with Jack, it made me wonder whether things got more contentious than he was alluding to in my interview with him, or did he leave there upset, or did somebody else come back and do something to Jack? It had to be, look.
Bradley Johnson.
When I found out that Bradley was a suspect, I was mad. I was really upset, knowing that they thought that. But then again, when it comes to an investigation, police are doing their job.
Bradley and Jack had a disagreement, and he admits to owning the same caliber gun.
So that definitely stepped up our interest in Bradley. This is a gun that we needed to take a look at.
Bradley's gun was collected, taken to the lab where it was test fired. The ballistics on the gun did not match the projectile that was recovered from Thorny autopsy.
With nothing concrete linking Bradley to the murder, he is dropped as a suspect. Detectives also corroborate Carol's alibi.
On the day that this happened, we were able to verify that she was at work and she was accounted for at that time. We were able to eliminate Carol as a suspect.
Looking for new leads, detectives speak to the other nieces and nephews who were close to Jack.
During our interview of Carol, she pulled aside her nephew, Michael LaPea, who was almost like a son to her, and he had been at the house a lot.
They got along good. Michael joined the military. Jack was very proud of Michael. Jack took pride in the nieces and nephews because he watched them grow up.
Michael was brought in to the homicide office and interviewed about Jack's murder. And during that interview, Michael had said that he was unemployed. He was trying to seek help through the VA hospital due to his PTSD from being in the Army. Michael had been discharged from the military due to his use of cannabis.
Michael also admits he'd fallen out with the family, including his aunt and uncle, and hadn't seen them in a year.
He specifically denied being over near the victim's house, and he made reference to them being estranged. Michael had a bit of a drug problem, and Carol and Jack decided to distance themselves from Michael and not let him come to the house.
Detectives still need to know where Michael was when Jack was killed.
We knew Carol left around 6 a.m. We knew that Bradley was there about 10:30. We knew Carol found him around 3 o'clock. So there's a window of opportunity of about 4 hours. He told us he was at home in Sharpsburg on the day of the incident, July 21st, 20 minutes away from Jack's house.
He said that his girlfriend had kind of unexpectedly taken the day off and they spent the day together. Nothing out of the ordinary. He gave us some landmarks on our timeline that we could check out. Michael and his girlfriend Melanie had gone and done some shopping in the town that they lived in. He said that he had had a doctor's appointment at the VA hospital later that afternoon. These were things at businesses and locations that we could check from doing surveillance video or getting sales transactions. Michael's girlfriend Melanie did corroborate his activities, and she stated they had spent the day together.
It was determined that his alibi had checked out.
A day into the investigation, with Jack's closest circle cleared, investigators escalate the search for the missing jewelry.
We were physically going to many pawn shops to try to see if anybody had sold this jewelry. We didn't get any traction with that.
That's when we started doing a canvass of the neighborhood.
When we were doing our neighborhood canvass, so many people had mentioned near their house there's a meat factory, and they had concerns about the employees. We had heard things like they hire people with records, they hire criminals. From talking to Carol, she said they have a straight view into Carol and Jack's home, and Jack had mentioned sometimes he would let people use his phone or use the bathroom when they were on their break, and it upset her.
In a case like this, you may see, hey, look at this guy, he got some gold on. It's a crime of opportunity.
We knew that they got their morning break right around the time when people stopped hearing from Jack, so we definitely wanted to look into that and see what the consensus was over there.
I think we did like almost 40 interviews of all the employees to see who they were.
One worker in particular piques police interest.
Ronald Levins was a name that came up from multiple employees in the context of people who had gone over to Jack's. This may be the person that Carol was aware that had come over there. Ronald Levins was somebody who had had a criminal history of petty theft and assault, so he was on our radar for sure.
Investigators worked quickly to bring Ronald in for an interview.
Ronald indicated that he had known Jack and they were actually friendly, and that's why he was allowed to come into the house when Carol wasn't home. Carol said she would get upset with Jack. She would say, Jack, don't just let anyone in our house. You do that. And he would just, kind of shrug it off. But she just didn't want people coming into the house that she didn't know.
Investigators asked Ronald point blank if he had anything to do with Jack's murder.
He said he had no involvement in Jack's death. The day that Jack was killed, Ronald didn't come to work. He had actually taken scheduled vacation for Friday and Monday. Ronald Blevins' alibi checked out, and we were able to eliminate him as a suspect in this case.
Desperate for a new lead, investigators look for similarities with other robberies in the area.
After Jack's murder, we talked to the local authorities, and during that we learned of several burglaries, one of which an older lady was burglarized. About $5,000 worth of quarters were taken.
Jack's killer had stolen his coins as well as jewelry. Is this the same person? And could they strike again?
The neighbors were very afraid. We still have a killer out there.
It was a whodunit. When something like this happened, you think that anything's possible.
Another recent robbery in the neighborhood.
We learned that during that burglary, there were some items similar to what Jack had that were taken, and it was a burglary that happened during the day, which is the timeline we were looking at in this particular incident. Oftentimes in our investigations, we see that residential burglaries are done during the day in bedroom communities where the chance of the people inside the home being at work are better, and that way they can go in and they can take what they need without fear of being caught.
With Jack being retired and home all day, had he caught the burglar red-handed and paid the ultimate price? The neighboring police department already has a suspect in custody.
Vernon Zielinski was identified as a possible suspect in this case. He had been recently arrested.
The items that Vernon was accused of taking were coins, while Jack had coins that were missing. So Vernon Zielinski was tracked down and he was interviewed. We really just wanted to do an interview and determine what connection, if any, he had to Jack. During the interview, he said that he had been arrested for the burglary, but that burglary was at an old employer's house. He denied knowing Jack, and he said that the day that this happened, he was actually at work.
We confirmed that through his new employer that he was working that day, during the time frame that this would have occurred.
Vernon was somebody we were absolutely able to rule out of being directly involved. At that stage in the investigation, we had no idea who might have done this and why.
48 hours after Jack's murder, with no arrests in the case, fear is growing in Kennedy Township.
Everyone was concerned that how in broad daylight can someone walk into a house, kill somebody, and walk out without even being seen.
The hardest thing to comprehend was the murder. It was point-blank assassination. Stone cold killing. You never expect anything like this. I know I didn't.
Waiting for an arrest. You're still in that daze of trying to process it all. He's not coming back. It's just too unbelievable. Is this going to be another murder unsolved?
We had a lot of information to go on, and we were constantly moving the investigation forward. People were being eliminated, further suspects were being developed.
3 days after Jack was discovered dead, police get a major break.
A local pawn shop in Sharpsburg, PA, which is another small little borough within Allegheny County, the owner had called the local police due to some suspicious activity. On the day of the incident, July 21st, he said a gentleman came in with a cachet of gold and was trying to sell it to him.
What the employee found to be concerning was, first of all, the jewelry was manipulated. It was very distinguishable pieces, but they had been, it seemed to be hammered or just manipulated in a way that would make them hard for law enforcement to identify. It threw up a red flag to him, but also he seemed to think that this was a person who had sold him stolen jewelry in the past. So he didn't buy the jewelry, but he also had the foresight to know he wanted to see where this jewelry might have come from. He knew it was important to get a picture of it. So he took a photograph of the items that this person was trying to sell.
He provided us with the photographs, and they were taken to Carol, who viewed them.
She became very upset. She started crying, and she said, "That's our jewelry."
It felt like we were closing in. Based upon the photograph of the jewelry, we were were to get that out to the local department, they could share it with the pawn shop owners in town if anyone comes in with it.
Investigators hope they can identify the seller.
The pawn shop owner was able to give a good description of the person who brought the jewelry in. A younger white male, black hair, and thin build. That description was provided to the local police chief in Sharpsburg, and he thought that fit the description of the white male from that area. It gave us a very good lead in this case. A photo array was put together to include 8 individual photographs, and they were shown to the shop owner.
We have a set of instructions that we give them, and we say, the person that we're looking for may or may not be in here, but if you see the person indicated on the lineup. So once he reviewed the photo array, he did identify who that person was. It was a huge break. It was exactly what we needed.
Coming up, police find stunning evidence pointing to Jack's killer.
In the video, we knew exactly who it was.
This was a shock to everyone.
You never thought that would happen. It would be that person.
But making an arrest wouldn't be easy.
She provided alibis for him and just denials.
Until investigators find proof no one can deny.
Those records
Identified the man who tried to pawn murder victim Jack Park's jewelry. His name, Brian Gibbons.
He's been a known thief to the local police department. We went after that lead strong.
We were feeling pretty confident that Mr. Gibbons may be our man, or at least know who our man was. We were very excited and very motivated to go find him.
Brian has a long history of petty crimes, but investigators need to determine if he's a killer. 4 days after the murder, they get a warrant to search his home.
Specifically, we were looking for any of the very distinguishing items that Jack Parks had. Unfortunately, we didn't find any of the victim's jewelry in the house, but we did find some items that did turn out to be stolen from someone else.
Based upon the search at Mr. Gibbons' residence, we were able to arrest him and have him sent to the county jail.
Investigators question Brian about Jack's missing jewelry.
He said that he didn't have anything to do with it. At that point, we were trying to determine if perhaps he'd been given some jewelry to sell, that maybe he didn't know its origin and he went to go sell it. We really just wanted to see if we could come up with any connection to rule him either in or out on the homicide of Jack Parks.
Brian tells detectives he doesn't know the victim and has never been to his home.
He said he had no connection to Jack at all. He denied having any knowledge of the Jack Parks homicide. We asked, well, what's your alibi? And he goes, I was arrested for entering an abandoned house that day. And that was confirmed. Brian was not the killer. He had a solid alibi.
It was clear he was not the same individual who had come in to the store on that Monday and tried to sell the jewelry.
The pawn shop owner mistakenly identified the wrong person.
The investigation kept hitting dead end after dead end.
We thought we had it, but then once we eliminated him, we took a pause. We had to step back a minute, not start all over, but then keep everything else in perspective.
While detectives hunt for new leads, Jack's loved ones struggle with their grief. Instead of looking forward to Jack's wedding, 5 days after his murder, they attend his funeral.
When he told me he was going to get married, his brother and I would have stood up for him. I was proud because I was never a best man. And there I was, carrying his casket. God, to have something like that happen in such a quick time, it's devastating to everybody.
You feel the hurt, but it really doesn't sink in until the funeral's all over. And then the shock is over. It's reality. He's gone.
Fearing the case could go cold, a week after the murder, police step up the hunt for Jack's stolen jewelry, hoping the culprit is still attempting to sell it at a pawn shop.
We all just sort of fanned out and we took particular geographical areas. We knew there was still a person that was out there trying to sell Jack's jewelry, and we had to just keep holding out hope that the pawn shop would take their identification, that they would keep good records. That's what kept us going, honestly. There is a detective in the city of Pittsburgh who is a pawn shop records analyst, and I reached out to her and I told her what items that we had missing, and on August 4th I heard back from her, and she told me that she found the jewelry where it had been sold.
Investigators raced to the pawn shop.
We had to go take a physical look at it, see who, if anybody, was on camera. Some store policies, all they have to do is take an individual's driver's license number. They don't even have to make a photocopy of it. So we were trying to remain optimistic that somehow we would get an image of the actual person who tried to sell that jewelry. It could have been anyone at that point.
The pawn shop has surveillance video, and what detectives see on tape is jaw-dropping.
It was, oh my God.
We knew exactly who it was. In the video, it was Michael Apaya, which was Carol's nephew that Jack raised like one of his own.
This was a shock to everyone.
When we first had dealings with Michael, early on in the investigation, he did provide an alibi about businesses he was at, doctor's appointments.
Michael had his girlfriend Melanie saying that he was with her during the time that Jack would have or could have been killed. So it was kind of going back, trying to retrace what he had initially told us.
We still had to do a little bit more digging. We had to work on if we were missing something. Early on, when we talked to Michael, he had given detectives his phone number. I wanted to get his phone records.
While investigators wait for those records, they call Michael back in.
We are going to interview him and see what he has to say now that we have him on tape pawning his uncle's jewelry.
We decided that it would probably be ideal to bring Michael and his girlfriend Melanie in at the same time, being that she was the person who was providing an alibi for him, and chip away at that and see where the truth lied. We took them both back to our office, and they were interviewed in separate rooms. Michael, in his interview, was initially very adamant that he had nothing to do with this. He denied involvement with the murder, involvement with the jewelry, and he just would not deviate from that.
Melanie stands by her story too.
She provided alibis for him and just denials.
Melanie is pretty much telling us that he was with her during the time that Jack would have or could have been killed.
She was just defensive and trying to argue with what we knew was not true. And that was that he had sold Jack's jewelry. We showed her a picture of the jewelry and she tried to say it was hers. And we knew that was a lie.
With neither Michael nor Melanie cracking under the pressure, detectives need something to break the deadlock.
When we got the information about the cell phone records, it was a huge break. We were very happy that it finally had come through. It was like everything came full circle.
Parks was shot to death in his own home. Investigators get the break in the case they needed. Incriminating cell phone GPS data.
When I got Michael's phone records, I started to see where generally he spent most of his time, which was consistent with his home.
He told us he was in Sharpsburg, 20 minutes away from Jack's house, on the day of the incident.
Parts of his alibi checked out, cell phone data-wise, but there was an anomaly where about 11:45, his cell phone pinged over in the area of Jack and Carol's house. To me, the significance of 11:45 was it is in this time where Carol can't reach Jack.
It would be impossible to be in Sharpsburg and your phone ping off a tower in Kennedy Township. The amount of distance between the two, it wouldn't be possible. He was not at home. He was over near his uncle's house.
So 11:45, Michael's phone being over there was an aha moment. Those records don't lie.
Detectives want to see how Michael will react when confronted with his own cell phone records.
It was like he had just got smacked in the head with a baseball bat. He became very quiet, took a second, and he just let it all out.
I was suffering from PTSD, and the morning of July 21st, I asked Mel to take a ride with me. She just drove down with me and I parked her car. I told her to wait. She didn't go to the car. She didn't know where we were going.
Michael's explanation of why he went to see Jack only raises more suspicion.
About a year ago, I was accused of stealing jewelry, and I wanted to make amends. I wanted to fix it. I knocked on a door to apologize and talk. At that time, he became hostile, and he choked me and swung at me.
His story changed to self-defense.
He had two hands around my neck, and at that time, I felt life was threatened. I had a pistol, 380 on me. It went off.
Reconciling that just wasn't possible. Jack was shot one time, right close to his ear. Basically, someone held a gun to his head and executed him.
He fell to the floor, and I panicked. Ren grabbed jewelry, and I left.
Michael tells detectives he sold the jewelry for $1,000. Even more shocking is what he spent the money on.
You stated that that's one of the people you sometimes purchase narcotics from.
Yes. I gave him about $6 or $7.
In addition to that, several days later, what did he give you?
He gave me heroin.
Michael was following a path of substance abuse that was getting to be more addictive drugs, and his use was increasing. It wasn't recreational anymore. It was more the behavior of an addict.
It was heartbreaking for us to know that someone who was much like Jack's son, a very close family member, would do something like that in exchange for a couple of dollars to get high.
I believe Michael went to that house to take jewelry. He knew Jack was there, and the only way he was going to get that jewelry is if Jack was dead. He walked up to the house, and as soon as Jack met him at the door and turned his back to him, he shot him, and he fell, and he died instantly.
On August 5th, 2014, Michael Lapaya is charged with first-degree murder.
To say to Carol, we know who did this. It was hard, but the hardest answer that we had for her is when she said, Michael who? And he had the same last name as her, really. It was hard to tell her that, it's your nephew. And it just hit her, and she was very upset.
You never thought that would happen. It would be that person.
It's still to this day so hard to believe that somebody that they loved, Michael, could have done something like this. I mean, what he did, I can't describe. There's no words.
At trial, Michael is found guilty. On December 9th, 2015, the 24-year-old is sentenced to life in prison.
He took a loving, caring man and just executed him. There was no winners. We lost Jack. Who won? Nobody.
I would never forgive him. Michael took away my best friend, my brother. He took away a lot from me. To this day, I still hate the guy.
Jack will never be forgotten. In the beginning, it's hard talking about a loved one without.
Somebody is intentionally trying to kill patients here.
They saw 18 suspicious code blues and up to 9 deaths.
She would talk about the thrill of a code, so we knew we had a problem and we had to start an investigation into it.
They told him, until we can establish cause of death, there isn't a case here. And so our coroner went on a quest.
I said, we're done with this. We're turning this place upside down. You can see us at the courthouse. Chillicothe is a very small rural town, 10,000 people. It's an idyllic town. Everybody kind of knows everybody, and you couldn't ask for a better town to grow up in and to be educated in.
We are about 120 miles from any major metropolitan area, so you're talking about rural Missouri. They call us the home of sliced bread because this is where the first bread slicing machine was created. We're kind of known as the heartland, right in the middle of America. Hedrick Medical Center is a small critical care hospital. These are hospitals that are in underserved area in the rural parts of America, and they're there to take care of the general health of the community, but they're not places where critically acute people are given to. So a lot of times we have nursing home patients who contract pneumonia. They just need a hospital room to administer drugs. And that's probably the common patient in a recovery room.
The population is probably going to be skewed with the elderly, but it's not confined to the elderly. This is a very small hospital. It's a 40-plus bed hospital, so it's very, very small.
Her name was Norma Pearson, and Norma Pearson's blood sugar went to 0 and she coded.
It's a medical emergency, and it's called a code because oftentimes these patients are hooked up to machines and something starts alarming. Something is seriously wrong.
Her organs were shutting down because she had no blood sugar.
And everybody who's available responds to this code. And the number one job of this team is to save this person's life.
Her blood sugars kept fluctuating dramatically. And this person wasn't even a diabetic, and they kept going up and down. And finally, it got into a very grave situation, but he was able to save her life.
Norma Pearson did not die in the hospital. She recovered. And Norma was taken back to a nursing home.
Dr. Kyle Greenlaw was a very smart man. He had a degree in pharmacology and came with a lot of experience.
He realized after he filled her with sucralose 2 or 3 times and her blood sugar continued to crash that she had been doped with insulin. And so he went looking for the reason. He thought at first it may just be accidental, that someone had crossed medications. It happens here, but it happens at a very small level. Maybe 2 or 3 cases a year where one of our inpatient persons is coding, which is when someone has acute respiratory or circulatory attacks where they can't breathe or their heart isn't working and they need critical intervention. After that, Dr. Greenlaw realized that probably someone was doing it intentionally.
And that's when he came to the conclusion that somebody was juicing the patients.
After Norma coded and recovered, there were several more codes and deaths. And some were not just insulin. There were other drugs that were used.
Dr. Greenlaw becomes very concerned. And he actually goes to administrators at Hedrick and says, I think that somebody is intentionally trying to kill patients here and may have killed patients here. The hospital say they're going to investigate, but some of the nurses feel like if they say anything, their job could be in jeopardy. And so they become, I think, really concerned.
We had kids that were the same age, and he was the coach of our baseball team. One day at practice, he said, hey, look, when practice is over, I need to talk to you. And I said, great, what can I help do? What is it? He said, well, I got somebody that's juicing my patients at the hospital, meaning that they were giving them drugs and things that weren't prescribed and causing fatal outcomes or near fatal outcomes. And that's when we knew we had a problem and we had to start an investigation into it.
Jennifer Hall is a respiratory therapist. So a respiratory therapist administers prescribed breathing treatments. They help clearing of lungs, make sure airways are clear, and continue just to service patients in their breathing.
Jennifer Hall started in December of 2001. It was almost immediate that people at the hospital started noticing unusual things, such as patients that were in for relatively unrelated causes starting to have very bad symptoms like breathing problems and other issues, things that they did not expect to occur and certainly not at the frequency that was being observed.
Some of the nurses and some of the doctors began to look very closely at Jennifer Hall for a couple of different reasons. She seems to be in close proximity. When all of these codes are occurring, she is almost always the one who alerts other staff members that these codes are happening. And nurses notice that Jennifer seems to have an unusual level of enthusiasm for codes.
Jennifer was known as somebody who wanted to be in the limelight. She liked excitement. She did not like dull days, and she was just eager to be in the middle of the action. Several nurses reported Jennifer telling them statements like, "Oh, don't you just love a code? Isn't it just great?"
She would, enter the work environment and start her shift and make a comment, "Oh, I think tonight we're going to be really wild. I think we're going to have some codes."
Those are the kind of comments that really are not appreciated. They're just insensitive comments. Nobody wants to think that there's going to be a code. And oftentimes when Jennifer Hall would make these statements, it seemed to them that there would be a code.
Jennifer Hall liked to pretend that she had a sixth sense. She liked to tell the nurses, "Oh, I think you better keep a look on the patient in room 2. And sure enough, room 2 that night there'd be a code.
But they could not find any evidence to prove that Jennifer Hall was responsible for the code blues that were occurring in the unit at such a high frequency.
She was the only constant figure on that medical chart. She discovered the code. She logged in everything about the code, and it was in her handwriting on the charts, and all of them were the same.
David Wesley Harper was a young man, I think in his 30s, mid-30s.
He came into the hospital suffering from bronchitis. This is an upper respiratory infection.
David Harper was really ready to be discharged, but they wanted to keep him one more night because they thought that he needed some assistance with his breathing when he was sleeping. So they wanted to do a test to see how he could adjust to this machine he was going to be taking home that would help him after he was discharged.
While he was engaged in the sleep study, he all of a sudden suffered cardiac arrest.
He coded mysteriously and traumatically. The doctors said that when they came and found him, that he was curled up in a position that made them think that his brain had suffered oxygen starvation and had for some time. And so that came from nowhere. He was not even in the hospital for any kind of care. He was there to do a sleep study and died mysteriously.
This was completely unexpected and had nothing to do with either his bronchitis nor his involvement in the sleep study. The records showed that Jennifer Hall was one of the last there with him, and in fact, the last 25 minutes of his life, it was Jennifer Hall who was present.
David Harper's death was a shock to all the doctors.
So here's somebody who's really in the prime of his life, who's been on the mend, and then all of a sudden he dies.
David's death was particularly suspicious because he was a young person. Yes, he smoked, but he wasn't ill. He didn't have any known defects and should have walked out of the hospital the next morning.
I mean, this is a guy that 3 or 4 kids, and he goes in for a sleep apnea study and doesn't go home. Saddest thing in the world.
His death really set the hospital staff looking hard at Jennifer Hall.
During the cleanup of the code, which apparently is a complete mess, there can be things all over the floor because it's an emergency situation, They discover Jennifer Hall's jacket, and when they pick it up, one of the nurses discovers that there is a drug in her pocket.
Succinylcholine is a drug used to inhibit people. It paralyzes your throat, or it paralyzes whatever it touches, but it paralyzes your muscles so that you don't gag and reject the inhibition process, the tube that goes into your throat for artificial breathing.
Succinylcholine is often used in surgery so they can put in a breathing tube because it's our natural inclination to fight when something is going down our throat. But if you don't have an alternative breathing mechanism in place, you can suffocate.
It's highly dangerous. And if it paralyzes you in your lungs, you cannot take a breath. And so basically, if you die that way, it would be like drowning outside of the water. It would be a terrible way to die. It would feel like you couldn't breathe, almost like strangulation.
It paralyzes you, but you still kind of know what's going on. I mean, you're aware of your surroundings and things like that.
It would be an incredibly horrific and frightening and such a helpless death to know what's going on around you and to want to cry out for help and yet have no ability or no control over your body. It seems like a sadistic way to murder somebody. To find succinylcholine in her pocket. This is significant for a couple of different reasons. Number one is that even though respiratory therapists are able to administer some breathing medications, this is not one of them. So she is not authorized to administer this medication and would have no reason to have it in her possession. And number two, Mr. Harper had never been prescribed succinylcholine. He had never been administered that. So even if she claimed, for example, that I found it on the floor in his room and I picked it up and put it in my pocket, that didn't make any sense because that medication should not have been in that room, period.
After David's death, doctors started watching Jennifer Hall carefully. They had a secret meeting between themselves, and it was determined that Jennifer Hall was even present in places where she really shouldn't have been. She was discovering codes in patients' rooms that she wasn't assigned to be a respiratory therapist. That was highly suspicious, and so the doctors knew they needed to watch her closely. And so anytime there was a code and the crash cart came in, they would make sure that Jennifer didn't have any access to succinylcholine.
Jennifer Ann Hall was born in June of 1980, grew up in the Kansas City area. Her parents, Don and Deborah, were a middle-class family. Deborah was a dental assistant. Don installed fire alarms for a living. She had an older brother. Pretty normal childhood. Her friends at school described her as somebody who was somewhat outgoing, but also somebody who liked to really be the center of attention. Somebody who was always looking for ways to shift the spotlight over to herself. For example, if somebody was getting a lot of attention, she would at one time, pretend to have a broken ankle or a hurt ankle, so the guys would carry her around.
As she got older, I think she ran into early troubles. According to her family, there was an incident in her childhood where she set a locker on fire and was thrown out of school for doing that.
I would say setting a locker on fire, depending upon the circumstances, is concerning. I mean, it's not something that you see most 8th graders do. It's something that I would expect as a psychologist. You might see somebody maybe in high school with a history of problematic behavior, a history of trauma in the family, those kinds of things. Really a troubled child.
So she had an early extreme behavior that started showing up even before she had graduated high school.
After high school, she decided to become a respiratory therapist.
I think she liked the idea of authority that came from the medical field. She talked about her father like he was a doctor. He wasn't, but she told everybody he was. So she was really interested in the prestige that medicine brings.
She started a respiratory therapist career, I believe, at Cass County Medical Center in Harrisonville, where she got in trouble.
There were ongoing issues with Jennifer Hall. She had lodged a sexual harassment complaint against another employee who denied it completely, and ultimately it was discovered that it did not happen the way that Jennifer Hall claimed.
One day when Jennifer Hall was at work, a fire started at Cass Medical Center in the exact unit that Jennifer Hall was assigned to work in.
The fire is extinguished and the investigators are called out.
Jennifer Hall claimed that she was not inside the building, and in fact, she was outside in her truck getting a soda at the time the fires was set. However, evidence from inside the hospital said otherwise.
The investigators start hypothesizing that this mound of burnt paper was the actual source of the fire. They notice that Jennifer has a burn on her hand. Maybe she burned her hand lighting the fire on a match. She didn't realize the paper would go up in flames so much. And then, kind of oddly enough, Jennifer had gotten a new hairdo the day before. And this later becomes an additional source of evidence. The theory being that Jennifer was going to do this for attention. She was going to start this fire. She was going to be the hero, come in, put out the fire, and look gorgeous for the media.
Jennifer was arrested for the arson at the hospital and was later found guilty at trial.
It's my understanding that Jennifer was sent to prison, and then while she was in prison, the appellate court set aside her conviction for an errant trial.
Jennifer Hall's defense attorney kept mixing up dates and names, and the court actually agreed with her stance when she later appealed. However, the state wanted to make sure that the charges stuck because they didn't want arson at another hospital.
She was released on bond pending a second trial, but then took a job in Livingston County at Hedrick Medical Center. It's my understanding that she did not reveal to anyone that she had a pending case in Cass County. That was probably an oversight by many people.
Cole Gam was our retired conservation agent. He lived here in town. He and my dad were good friends. He was a nice guy. I think he had some cancer issues and things of that nature. But once again, they were getting ready to release him and he was going to go back home. And then they had a code. And of course, he didn't respond to the code. His son, his youngest boy, Dave, was going to go get his dad and take him home the next day. And he ended up not going home. If they're using succinylcholine and insulin because of their short lifespan and they dissipate very quickly, you can't find them at post-mortem when you do the autopsy. It's just, there's nothing there. And that's why they all look like natural cause death.
Jennifer was someone who was intelligent, she read, she liked drugs, she talks about drugs. So for Jennifer to be aware of whether or not succinylcholine can be detected in the body is probably a pretty high likelihood.
Basically, we came up with an idea that we needed more video presence in the hospital where they keep these kind of medications and more video on her so that we could, put the case together and figure out exactly what was going on. And so Cal went to the hospital and they were supposed to have done that. And then a little later on, we went and said, hey, where's the video? We're trying to solve grave crimes here, and we need to move forward in a positive manner in order to get this done. They thought we didn't know what we were talking about and that we were crazy and all this kind of stuff. And, you know, that was farthest from the truth.
They started happening with regularity, something to the tune of 2 or 3 or 4 a week in a hospital that would have 2 or 3 or 4 a year.
We knew we had a problem. When she's there from December to May, I think we have like 18 codes, something like that. And 8 of them result in death. I took all the statistics and went to the Washington University School of Medicine, and I had a doctor, an MD, and he's also have a doctorate in math, and he did the statistical representation of those code facts, and he said it's 1 in a million chance that that could happen if somebody wasn't doing it. Dr. Cal Greenlaw was very frustrated. He knows all this is going on. Well, does he admit your mom to the hospital if she's sick then? Because who's going to watch her and keep her alive? And so basically, he had to stay at the hospital around the clock when he had patients there to protect them.
Fern Franco was a 75-year-old woman who was in the hospital for pneumonia.
Fern was a resident at the nursing home. She had some infiltrate in her lower left lobe of her lung, and so they sent her to the hospital to clear that up. She was going home the next day, like all of these people. The next day they were going home.
So when she came down with a cardiac arrest and essentially her heart stopped out of the blue, this was something that was so unusual.
Once again, Jennifer Hall was there, participated in her care, and was, somebody who was the first person to go let other nurses know that she was coding.
Her death happened one morning early, like 5 a.m., something like that, and I got the call. I knew that it was a public administrator case. I knew that there wouldn't be any family members out there or anything.
As soon as she passed, the coroner, Scott Lindley, who at this time was incensed about the number of deaths, went immediately to Hedrick Medical Center and collected her body.
I went to the funeral home, and our night embalmer was still there finishing up a prior case, and so he embalmed her like 20 or 30 minutes after she passed away, or within an hour. I got an order from the court. We did a complete autopsy on her and saved all of her tissues.
At the time of Fern Franco's death, it was suspected that the cause of death was succinylcholine poisoning. She had respiratory arrest. Jennifer was suspected of participating in some way, shape, or form, but the mechanism couldn't be proven, and there was no smoking gun where someone saw her inject somebody with a substance. And so without that direct evidence, we have a circumstantial case. In this particular circumstance, we didn't even have a scientifically proven cause of death yet. And that was probably step one in making sure that there was an actionable case. The laboratory testing at the time could not distinguish the difference between naturally occurring succinylcholine that happens at death and synthetic succinylcholine that is used to innovate persons. So back in 2002, there really wasn't a good cause that could be proven medically.
We preserved all the specimens, and I froze them and kept them here in my freezer at the coroner's office. And then I went to the hospital and said, the gig is up. We're done with this. We're turning this place upside down. You know, give us all your stuff or you can see us at the courthouse.
Fern, Franco's death really did push Hendricks to take some action. And she was put on leave almost immediately.
Basically, then they started cooperating. They gave us everything we wanted at that point in time, but the horse was already out of the barn and running down the road.
Jennifer Hall is put under an investigation. She was terminated from Hedrick Medical Center. They told our local law enforcement, hey, until we establish cause of death, there isn't a case here. Local law enforcement closed their books and everyone went away and no investigation was began.
They thought that they couldn't prove it at trial.
Scott Lindley was not happy, and so neither were lots of the hospital staff. The doctors were not happy, the nurses were not happy. They thought that these patients were poisoned and they wanted to see something done about that. And our coroner went on a quest.
I earnestly started looking for a laboratory to try and figure out a test available to detect succinylcholine at post-mortem. I started calling all over the country with labs and went everywhere to try to get somebody to actually do or develop a test so we could clear this case up.
He was looking for a lab, and he eventually found one after about a year's worth of effort.
There was a guy by the name of Dr. Ballard back there, and he was starting to do a test and create a test to find this drug at death using mass spectrometry. So I took those specimens, hand carried them from my locker freezer all the way to Philadelphia and gave them to him to use in his test to see if we could actually detect succinylcholine. It was successful. And he really did a great job on the investigation.
They were able to use a new method to determine that the heart samples of Fern Franco contained both synthetic succinylcholine and morphine, and she shouldn't have had morphine in her system either.
They said that they couldn't be proven at court, and that was absolutely wrong because we'd already had the test proffered and published. And it was in the New England Journal of Medicine of mass spectrometry.
So Scott Lindley, after being told no by a couple of different prosecutors and investigators, decided to just take it upon himself to open an investigation and do what he called a coroner's inquest. Scott got a pretty famous forensic pathologist named Dr. Bodden to take a look at all his work.
He went through all the cases and determined at that point in time that there's all likelihood that all those 8 cases were homicides. The morning that I went to the courthouse to start on the inquest, I got served by the prosecutor and the sheriff to stop my inquest.
That Scott just put his information and research in a binder and held it on a shelf. I was coming into office in January of 2011. Scott first approached me and said, "Hey, I got this hospital poisoning case. I'd like to show it to you. Will you take a look at it?" And I said, "Well, sure. I would keep an open mind about any kind of alleged poisoning. That's definitely a crime, and I would definitely take a look at it because murder has no statute of limitations."
I showed the case to him, and then he was able to convince the PD to take it and finish it up.
Ultimately, it was the assignment of Brian Schmidt. He actually contacts the profilers that work at the FBI and their persons who come from the Army and other intelligence agencies to sit down and work up a profile of Jennifer Hall. And they do that. I listened to what the profilers say. Now, they didn't come up with motive, but they just say what motivates Jennifer. And you can hear it too in what she tells witnesses. She was motivated by seeming special, that she wanted everyone to think that she was more intelligent than she was. And then she had sort of, on top of it, the fire setter firefighter syndrome, where you light a fire just to go put it out so that you could be in the middle of the action.
She would come to work and talk about the thrill of a code and how she loves them. And that's what she got off on.
We also see this incredible need for attention. And so they began to have this kind of savior complex where they almost exhibit a form of Munchausen by proxy, where they are creating these medical emergencies in their patients and then coming in and being the savior. And of course, a certain number of times, they're not going to be able to save that patient.
I tell people it was exciting to see whether or not someone would live or die and to participate in that process. At that point, Brian Schmidt began to really button the case up, to see what witnesses we still had. And also, we lost one of our key witnesses about that time. Dr. Cal Greenlaw, who was the initial person who discovered his patients were being poisoned, he passed away from cancer. And we realized that time was of the essence. It's just we had to use whatever resources we had to get what we could done. And he made the effort to do so.
It was because of that great investigative work that the charges against Jennifer Hall were able to be filled.
The efforts of the PD and myself, we kind of kept tabs on her, so we did.
People who investigated her looked closely at how she was living her life, really found a life filled with basically chaos, and to some extent, really victimizing other people. There were several restraining orders taken out against her during this period of time.
Jennifer Hall was under indictment for a few cases. One was an allegation that she forged a prescription in Kansas, and then one for stealing from current significant other in Florida. And then there was an investigation where it was alleged that she was trying to extort a veterinarian in Texas.
They found her hiding out in a motel room there because she knew the arrest was coming. They brought her to Chillicothe for arraignment and placed in jail. To get a murder conviction at trial, that's very difficult when everybody's either can't remember or, dead or whatever. It's hard to put that case together.
So her attorney and I start the discussions about plea. A plea in this case was a possibility because a trial had its challenges for the state. And so ultimately, Jennifer Hall pleads guilty to 2 manslaughter charges and 1 assault. And the plea agreement was for Jennifer Hall, not me, to pick 3 victims that she specifically remembered poisoning. in our hospital. And she did.
She pleads guilty to the first-degree involuntary manslaughter of Corval Gann, of Fern Franco, and she pleads guilty to the aggravated assault of Norma Pearson.
At sentencing, she was asked to describe what she did, and she agreed to what she did. She just did it in a way that didn't sound like she had any kind of feeling about it, one way or the other. She played it in a way that she was talking about something that just evoked no emotion, maybe like placing a piece of paper into a file folder. This case affected the community in many ways. The doctors felt terrible. The nurses felt powerless. The families were very disappointed. They felt like no one was listening to them. The hospital had a cloud of suspicion for a while. That was not good for the community. We need our hospital to be trusted by the community. It's under new management now, and it is trusted again. It has been rebuilt. So those things have all been repaired. But for a time, it was pretty bad out there.
It's a sad issue, but it was finally dealt with. A lot of people in town here that just wanted us to go away. It's nice to know that finally it's validated that Dr. Greenlaw did the right thing.
It really just is unfortunate that I was not able to name every victim and every person who went through these terrible poisonings. But at the end of the day, knowing that Jennifer Hall has, at least in some way, taken responsibility for poisoning patients at our hospital lets me sleep much better at night.
Sarah Maynard was found bound and gagged but alive in the basement of a Mount Vernon home. Police arrested Matthew Hoffman.
He just kept torturing me and torturing me and torturing me. He said, if you try to escape, I'm going to kill you.
My assistant news director calls me and says, we're getting word that Sarah has been found. I need you to go to this location.
I was free. I know I was free, but I was still scared. I was just a scared little girl.
Matthew Hoffman remains in the Knox County Jail this evening. Her brother Cody, mom Tina, and her mom's friend Stephanie Spring are nowhere to be found.
I don't know if such people are.
This is a life or death situation. They need to be saved.
Sarah's taken to the hospital Sunday morning.
He saw this blood on the tile. Like, oh my gosh.
Our team broke in and arrested Hoffman and recovered her. She's taken right to the hospital, and while she's there, then investigators go and talk to her to try to find out what she knows.
As we started telling people, Sarah's alive, Sarah's alive, Sarah's alive, the community is overjoyed. But then the following question is, well, what about Tina? What about Cody? What about Stephanie?
All right, Matt, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pat you down here real quick.
Hoffman's in custody, and the interviews are beginning. So, yeah, a lot of moving parts right now.
I feel the pressure of knowing everybody wants to know the answer to where their loved ones are, where Tina, Cody, and Stephanie are.
We wanted to know what happened to her. We were hoping that she had some information that would help us locate the other 3 people. Don't know if they're alive or dead.
Cody and I went to school, had a normal day at school, came home. he was like kind of rushing to the steps of the house. And I said, Cody, wait. So I had opened the door. Well, it felt like somebody was like on the other side of the door messing with the doorknob. And so when I had opened the door, I kind of like fell in a little bit. I looked down, went to take my shoes off and seen a pile of blood. I was screaming for Mom. Nothing, didn't see Mom. Usually she had greeted us every day when we got home, and she hadn't been there. Well, the dog wasn't in his cage, didn't see the dog, hadn't seen Mom. So I proceeded to turn right, which is where the hall is, where our rooms were, and this man came out and grabbed me by my throat. I jumped through his arms, ran to my room, and when I got into my room, I seen blood everywhere. There was blood all over my walls and all over the floor. He busted the door open, and then he had the knife at my chest, which had blood on it. I don't know if Cody tried to run out the door, what he tried to do. And then the man put me over his shoulders, took me down in the basement, in the garage, and laid me face down, and started asking me a bunch of questions if anybody was going to be coming to the house anytime soon. And I had said, yeah, my mom's boyfriend. Well, he started laughing. He tied my arms behind my back, tied my legs. And I said, ouch, that hurts. And he said, I don't care if your arms and legs turn purple. And then after that, he had picked me up, put me over his shoulder, took me back upstairs, put me in a sit-up position in the kitchen. And he got like a white towel, he put it in my mouth, gagged me. And then he put a towel over my eyes, tied it. So now I'm blindfolded. And then he put a pillowcase over my head and tied it. And then he had pushed me down, so now I'm face down in the kitchen tied and blindfolded and gagged. He asked me if I could see, and I had told him that I couldn't, but it was white, so I could see a little bit. I could see that there's groceries still in the bags in the kitchen. It seemed like an hour or so, I don't know. It seemed like forever. I'd just been laying there. The only thing I was thinking was, hopefully somebody finds me. But I was still scared.
Water good enough for you?
There's 3 people that are missing. We found 1 person. We need to find them.
I think you know what we want to talk about. But we need to find some people. We have 2 of our lead detectives on the case. Obviously, we want to interview Hoffman and see if he'll tell us, what happened.
Matt, can you hear me?
The clock is ticking because every person in law enforcement will tell you the longer that this drags on, the less likely that the people that they're looking for are going to survive.
He puts me over his shoulder and then takes me back down to the basement and then puts me in a vehicle. Before he blindfolded me and gagged me, I had seen Stephanie's Jeep in the garage. And I was like, why is Stephanie's Jeep in our garage? I didn't ask nothing. I just had screamed for Mom. No response. And then he had said, if you ask about your mom and brother again, I'm going to kill you. He had taken off out of the garage. He was driving really fast and really, out of control. So I'm thinking, where else is he gonna take me? Moving all over the place in the back, I'm suffocating pretty much. I'm blindfolded and gagged at the same time. I'm laying on my hands being tied behind me, laying on my back, and then my legs were tied. Then the car stops.
We gotta get to square up, man. You know and I know. You want to talk to one of us alone, or do you want us both in here, or you comfortable with both of us being here? Man?
The sooner we get this moving, the sooner we can all move on.
Finally, it became obvious that he wasn't going to say anything.
Matt, are you here with us?
We need to reconsider what we wanted to do next.
Matt.
I hear him get out of the car and shut the door. I talking to myself and I'm like, what am I gonna do? So somehow I knew, so I took my left shoulder and I put my head down and I tried to pull the blindfold down enough just so I could see a little bit. I sat up and I could see that we were at the baseball fields where Cody and I had played. A while goes by. I kind of could see a little bit that it was daylight and now it's dark, so I'd been laying there for a while in the car. So at this point, I don't really know what to do. Other than if he tells me to do something, I'm just going to do it. It's the only way that kept me, alive. He then grabs me by the legs and then picks me up, puts me over his shoulder, and then put me in the trunk of another car. And I was squished. I couldn't move. He unblindfolds me, but I'm so gagged. And then he just starts driving all crazy and fast, and he says, if you make a sound, if you try to talk, if you make a sound and I get pulled over, I'm gonna kill the cop and then I'm gonna kill you.
I think we need your help and you need ours.
He's like he's in a trance. He's just sitting there. And this goes on for hours. They're sitting there asking him questions, and he's not responding in any way.
Hey, Matt. I'm Joe Dietz. I'm a special agent in the Highway Criminal Investigation.
Joe tries all the strategies. Phone call in front of him.
Sarah was wanting to find out what happened to her mother and brother, but he's just not having it.
Praying with him.
Times in this world, in spite of whatever wrong we may have done, we have the opportunity to do something right for someone that we care about.
Staying silent, trying to use Matthew's own technique back against him. All of it to no avail.
Just give me a clue. Say the time. Say, okay, I'll tell you this, or I'm not going to say anything, so don't go hanging around.
We have to assume that we've got to find these people ourselves.
We got Hoffman's ex-girlfriend's information. We felt that she may be able to assist us in terms of locations, places that she and Matthew had gone while they were dating that may lead us to the victims. Matthew was crazy about trees and he loved the woods. And a very typical date would be to go out on a Saturday to some unusual tree that Matthew had singled out from all the other trees and string guidelines up in the canopy of the tree, and they would lay in hammocks all day on a Saturday afternoon and listen to birds. She and I drove all around the county to all of the places that she could recall Matthew taking her and hanging out in these trees. With very little to go on, we're kind of looking for a needle in a haystack.
Going out the door.
We're very frustrated now because we're not getting any information from Matthew at all that will help us locate these individuals. We don't know if they're alive or dead.
Eventually the car stops, takes me out of the trunk, puts me over his shoulder with all the blankets on top of me. I hear a door open, like a house door. And then sits me down and then tells me not to move. I was a super shy, quiet girl, so I didn't really talk very much. I'm super scared. I'm shivered up. I don't know what to do. I don't know what's going on. The only thought I have is this guy's gonna kill me.
One of the detectives tells us that he noticed that when Hoffman came in to be processed, fingerprinted and photographed, and a DNA swab taken, that there was a female deputy that he talked to and actually opened up a little bit to. And when I hear this, and it occurred to me that, well, maybe what we need to do is just to have a female come in and try to interview him and see if maybe he opens up to her.
I get the call from Harry that they want me to try to talk to him and interview him. I immediately know the stakes are very high, and this is going to have an impact on many people's lives, for good or bad, depending on what we get out of this. So it was very serious, and I knew that right away. We're trying to figure out how can we get him to talk? How can we... This is a very unique situation. I don't think I've ever come across a case where someone's gone without speaking at all and almost just not even present at all. Hi, Matt. Hi, my name's Chris. I wanted to talk to you for a second if I could. Just gonna close the door. What are you doing? We decided to put my hair up in a ponytail, and I went in with a softer voice. I was never cutesy and young. I was just trying to, he selected Sarah, 13-year-old, blonde girl that was wearing ponytail in her pictures. So it was just a thought to say, if we want to make him feel more comfortable, let's do that. Do you go by Matt or Matthew, or do you want me to call you something else? I don't want to call you the wrong name. Doesn't matter. What do your friends usually call you? Do they call you Matt? Okay, that's okay. All right. Like I said, you can call me Chris. I'd like to help you, Matt, and find out how you're feeling and what's going on. I know everybody in the community is aware of what's going on in the moment. I know the entire police department is outside this door waiting to hear those infamous words of location and where they are. I know you don't know me, but sometimes that can be a good thing, because sometimes it's easier to talk to someone you don't know.
As soon as we get into the house, takes the blankets off me, unblindfolds me, but I'm still gagged. And then he tells me to go, and I'm not sure where he wants me to go, so he just starts kicking me around. And so I'm army crawling, wherever he wants me to go, because I'm still tied. My hands are still tied behind my back, and my legs are still tied, so I can't walk. So we go into this bathroom, and all I see is just leaves and bags, like plastic bags, all around the bathroom. He picks me up and puts me on the toilet seat on my butt, so I'm facing towards the door. And so he gets down on his knees, and he's right in my face, and he's like, "Are you hungry? Are you hungry? Are you hungry? Because too bad you're not eating." And he just kept torturing me and torturing me and torturing me. He said, "If you try to escape, I'm going to kill you." He now leaves the bathroom, he shuts the door, and it's super dark, it's pure dark in there. I'm looking around, and I see a window above the toilet, and there was no way for me to get up there, to get out. I'm gagged, my hands are behind my back tied, my legs are still tied. He busted through the door and said, "Come on, follow me." He picks me up, he tells me to follow him, he opens up a door. No idea what the door is to. There was like a chest, like a wood chest. He moved that out of the way, told me to stand there and not move. He opened up the door. I see it's a basement. He pushes me, so I fall down all the steps. And now I'm at the bottom of the step.
that you were not in your head before. I just want to make sure you're still with me. I've been talking to him for about 30 minutes. One-sided. Just me talking. And then he, all of a sudden, puts his head up and starts speaking to me.
Must have done something bad. I wouldn't be here if I didn't.
Well, that can be worked through. It is a relief when he finally says something.
Do you know what it was that did?
I want to reconnect with him and get him to start talking again. So I'm leaning over and I touch his knee to try to make a connection. And he reacted and sat straighter up and then started speaking again.
I don't know where these other people are.
What other people?
The ones those guys grilled me about yesterday.
He says, here's your bed. I wanted to make it comfy. And when I'm looking around, it's just a bed of leaves. Like, it's just leaves. And then the comforters I slept with every night at Mom's is laying on top of the leaves. I was super scared. And I said, why are the blankets that I slept with every night at Mom's, you know, every night to bed, those were the blankets I slept with, are laying on top of these leaves?
Leaves? Why the heck would he put leaves in his basement and force Sarah to sleep on those leaves? What kind of monster is this?
He is a weirdo. I mean, he really was a weirdo. Like, he sat in the trees. If you look back here in the tree, there's a hammock where he would sit and watch people. He's just different.
I'm afraid that what they're saying is true and that I'm some sort of monster.
I don't think you're a monster at all.
With her rescue, we still want to remain optimistic that Tina, Stephanie, and Cody are alive, maybe being held against their will at some location.
I'm sure she still has some other fears of not knowing where her mom and her brother are. And that may be something that you can appease as well. Give her some peace.
I don't know how I can help her anymore now. That's what I mean, I don't know how.
He is saying that he's can't remember anything that's happening. He can't imagine that he had done anything like this before. Stay with me. Talk about something else. I just don't want you to go into your head. But if they're out there somewhere and can be helped, you're the key to that. So even if it's us kind of going through the timeline to maybe stir your memory. He's talking to me. He's communicating and connecting. I appreciate you talking to me this long.
Thank you, too.
And you're kind of on the edge of your seat trying to just hold on to the fact that the next thing he's going to say is where they are. If you have anything at all you think you can talk about, I can help you and help us, help Sarah and her family. Sitting there, I'm thinking, are they still alive? Can you tell me if they're still alive? Just let me know that. All we know for sure is that the clock is ticking and we are running out of time.
I asked where my mom and brother was, and I said, so how are we going to get to school? He got very angry, and he's like, if you bring it up again, I'm going to kill you. I'm sitting, and my arms are still tied behind my back. He pushes me down, and so now I'm laying down on the bed of leaves. And then duct tapes my legs together, so there's no possible way for me to move. He said he kidnapped me for ransom, that if I tried to escape, something about his buddies are gonna come get me, and he's gonna get away. I had no idea what ransom was. He had said that my parents had to pay him for kidnapping me. And so I was confused. I had no idea. I was just a little girl. I had no idea. I was just scared. He didn't make me believe I was going home.
I want to help you do that. Matthew Hoffman is playing a game, and he's winning. He's keeping control of the entire situation.
He walks back up the steps. Don't know where he's going. And then he comes back downstairs and he has a bowl of cereal with milk and said that's what I had to eat. And then I smelled the milk and it smelled spoiled, so I didn't eat anything. He said, if you're still hungry, you have to eat a dead squirrel. So he had the squirrel in his hand. And so I was scared. I'm like, oh my gosh, what's he gonna do? Force me to eat it? So I didn't eat anything.
This coffee's kind of getting me. Can we leave the bathroom?
Yeah.
Alright.
You're not gonna try and overpower me and take my gun or anything, right?
No, you might. If you want to, you can give it to someone.
Okay.
So, I want to use the bathroom.
Gary?
Joe takes him to the restroom.
In the moment, there's definite excitement and holding your breath. Is he really going to say something to Agent Dietz? Is he not? Is this part of the game?
Ultimately, he has a conversation with Joe and tells Joe that he's dreaming and he's seeing these horrendous images in his dreams.
He says, I had this dream of what had happened. I will tell you where the bodies are. He did it. He killed 3 people. I will tell you where the bodies are, but only if you agree to kill me while we're out there.
Well, that's not going to happen.
It's a very sad moment. This is probably going to be a recovery and not a rescue. It just weighs heavy how important it is to find the bodies for closure for the families.
There was no window. It was pure dark. 100% dark. I'm laying there on the bed of leaves, and he, pulls my pants down. I'm still tied. And then he sexually assaults me with the knife laying on my chest. I just had my head turned the entire time. And then after that, he took the knife off me and then, put my pants back up. I just know it hurt. I just had the thought of it hurting. There's a knife laying on top of me. Keeps telling me he's going to kill me. So is he going to kill me? And then I was still laying there tied up. And then he had left, walked upstairs, and after that, I just had laid there. I'm thinking, oh my gosh, what if he gets me pregnant? What if I get pregnant and I have to have a kid with this guy? That is a thought I did have.
We know that our searchers have looked pretty much everywhere that they can, and we're not going to be able to find these individuals without his help.
This is your last chance right now to talk to us. We're in the moment of knowing that we only have so much time left.
So, I mean, this is realistically our last opportunity.
You gotta think of your family.
And the lack of the media pressure also takes some of the other people that are, being affected by it. Sorry about that.
Okay. We're done. We apparently are told we are done. Disappointment, because I didn't get the answer that I wanted. You didn't get the people back. So you just kind of sit back and breathe that in, and you have to kind of live with it in the moment. He enjoyed playing with us, and he enjoyed having us basically beg for information and him be able to say inside, I'm not giving it.
But he's got the death penalty hanging over his head. The prosecutor approaches Hoffman's attorneys and says, let's talk about maybe making some kind of a deal here. We're willing to drop the death penalty in exchange for Matthew giving us a statement about what happened. And at that point, Hoffman's okay with dropping the death penalty. So the understanding is he has to give us a written statement about what happened, and he also has to draw a map of where we'll be able to find the remaining 3 people. He says, you've got to go out to Kokosing State Park. There's a tree there that I'm very familiar with, and he puts it on the little map that he draws. About 2 o'clock in the afternoon, I get in the car with the sheriff, and we have the other investigators following behind us, and the sheriff and I follow the attorney that's got the map. We drive out to Kokosing State Park, get out of the sheriff's car. We walk up to the attorney, and he goes, I think that's the tree he's talking about. And we're looking, and sure enough, it's about 60 foot tall. It's a beech tree, and about 30 feet up, you can see that there's a hollowed out point in the tree. And we're going, son of a bitch, this might be truthful. So now we're at the base of the tree, and I'm watching as one of the crime scene guys, he's cutting a square into the tree, and he has this pole with a mirror on it and attached to the end of it, and he sticks the pole in, and at first he's looking up the tree and he doesn't see anything, and then he adjusts the mirror, the pole, and he's looking down, and he goes, I see garbage bags. We're like, you gotta be kidding me. He really did this. He really did this. We lay a tarp out on the ground, and we're all gathered around as the 2 crime scene guys are lifting the garbage bags out. All of us are thinking at this point that what is really in those bags? Are they really body parts? We gather around the tarp, and the 2 crime scene detectives were watching as they pull one bag after another out. They pull 7 garbage bags out. Now they're laying on the tarp. And we're all gathered around, kind of quiet and like shaking our heads and just in disbelief, I think. Nobody's really saying anything, but once we have all 7 bags out, there's a sadness there that we're all feeling, that this is really family members, of our missing people. Awful, awful situation. I think all of us have seen some horrific things before, but this is still shocking to see this. I think it was just awful what had happened to these nice people. What kind of an animal would do this?
Today this investigation took a major turn.
Sheriff Barber gets up and he, in his own calm way, saying that, today we were able to locate the bodies, and unfortunately they're deceased.
We have discovered and recovered the remains of Cody Maynard, Stephanie Sprang, and Tina Herman.
And I don't think there was many of a dry eye at the press conference.
I felt for Sheriff Barber because I could tell during his press conferences he was also getting emotional, about it as well.
We're inspired by Sarah. We're inspired by Sarah's bravery. I asked Larry Maynard to convey to Sarah, to tell her that she was my hero.
I just broke down and started crying. I'm glad and thankful I didn't have to see that. They'll never be forgotten, and I will always love them tremendously. What I would do to be able to say that I loved them one last time.
As a journalist, you're taught never to show emotion. However, in this case, when the sheriff says 3 bodies of Tina, Cody, and Stephanie were stuffed in a tree in a garbage bag, I am pissed. I'm angry, and I'm heartbroken, just because that's not any way a person should die, let alone 3 people.
I'm walking down the hallway, and I can hear Sheriff Barber sobbing inside his office, and I give it a little bit of time, and I knock on the door, and I go in, and I say, "I love you, brother." And I said, "Good job." I said, do you need anything? And he said, "No, I'm all right." After this case, I got a phone call from somebody who told me that Sheriff Barber had committed suicide in his home. And that was a shocker, because Dave to me was, not only a friend, but, he's kind of happy-go-lucky guy, and just so nice to be around, and to know that he ended his life just was shocking.
Sheriff Barber took his own life. And we don't know why that happened, but I can't help but imagine that some of what we went through that week probably took a toll on him.
Matthew got the plea deal he made, which was in cooperation of, given the location of the bodies, the death penalty taken off. So he didn't get the death penalty. So he just got life in prison, which makes me happy, because I feel like that piece of shit needs to suffer. I think that he needs to rot in hell for the rest of his life.
My daughter is a high school history teacher at East Knox local high school. Cody would have graduated in May of 2018. So East Knox holds their graduation ceremony on their football field outside, and my daughter was there that day, and as she is walking across the field, they're preparing for graduation, there's a chair at the front of the seating area for students with a purple cap and gown. Sorry. There's a cap and gown draped across a chair with Cody's diploma and a white rose. And it totally blew me away. It hit me like a ton of bricks, because I'm, years removed from this thing, and It was just surreal. It was a reminder that we all did a good thing here in Knox County, and the bright spot of all of this is that there's a young lady who survived. Just proud to be able to say that I had a small part in doing that.
If Cody was alive today, I think that me and him would have a serious bond. And the innocent little boy that he was then, saying that he wanted to be in the Coast Guard, I think today that he would be saving people's lives. I think that he would be super successful as a straight A student, so I think he would even be in college or graduated college.
This is a case that you never let go of and always think about. I have no doubt that if he would not have found Sarah, she would not have made it through this situation. I believe that first he would have kept Sarah for as long as it was pleasurable to him to keep her. And this would not have been the last time that he did this, because he got a taste of it and realized he could get away with it, and he would have continued doing these things again, one way or the other.
Hoffman is in prison for the rest of his life in Toledo, Ohio, and I looked up his anticipated date of release. It was 01/01/8888.
I think the way that I grieve from my mom and brother being gone is that I realized that Mom and Cody wouldn't want me to sit here and suffer every day of my life, but knowing that I am the only survivor of it, and it hurts, knowing that I couldn't be the save of the day, and, there's nothing that I could have done, so I can't feel guilt. But my mom would not want me to take the easy way out either. She wouldn't want that for me, knowing that my children need me. My kids is what saved my life from not taking the easy way out. So it makes Sarah Maynard the strong-willed woman that she is today, to be able to say that she is the sole survivor, because I believe not very many people could go through such a thing and still be standing here as strong as I am today. I just try to live day by day, and just simple goals just to raise my kids every day, and just for them to be happy, then I'll be happy.
If you or someone you know has been affected by any of the issues raised tonight, please go to channel5.com/helplines for information and support. With an unprecedented glimpse into what goes on behind the scenes of the investigation, murder scene, the incident room, tomorrow at 8. More true crime next.